Welcome to a very beautiful scenery. I wanted to talk a little bit about trauma. I am going to talk a bit about myself here. And the reason for that is I am not a psychologist. I am not a professional in any way. So I'm going to talk about my experiences. Coping with trauma isn't easy, just like every therapeutical process. And this also is a therapeutical process. Highly recommend it. Life is so much better afterwards. First thing I wanted to address is that if you think, sometimes you think, yeah, there was so much trauma in my life. It can be mild trauma, it can be light trauma. But trauma is trauma at the end. And it changes the way your brain works. It just does. My parents weren't emotionally available. They didn't fulfill my emotional needs. And I was always the kind of kid that could play by himself. And they just thought that's what I am. And I was growing up in the 90s. And here, no one actually talked about any kind of therapies for kids. No one actually knew anything about diagnosing kids. Well, not at least in my family and not in my bubble, neither in school. So yeah, that was fun. But my parents weren't emotionally available to me. They didn't fulfill my emotional needs. That's the first thing that happened to me during my life. It's the things that I'm uncovering now. I've spent 2.5 years in therapy for addicts, and the journey of being of therapy, of addictive therapy, all boiled down to my inability to cope with my emotions. And I have regulated those emotions using substances and behaviors. So when I started uncovering it, and when I started actually witnessing my own emotions, because before that, there was no fucking way I could identify anything, any kind of emotions. I was either happy or sad, and these were to an extreme. I was either euphoric or feeling empty, sad, lonely, and I felt nothingness. I was just going with life as it presented itself, and I was just flowing through, just gradually. So later on, when I actually started witnessing my own emotions, started feeling them, and started to witness that there is much more to feeling than being either depressed or euphoric. And I'm talking depressed because I am also living with depression since I was a kid. My parents taught me a valuable lesson. Whatever I do outside of what I was told to do, I would be punished physically. I heard a lot. I was a kid. I made mistakes. That's obvious. And physical punishment never stopped me from repeating bad things that I did. But the physical punishments were severe for a very sensitive child that I was. And that taught me that whatever I do, the punishment is brutal. And if I want to do anything or achieve anything, it has to be a path of pain and suffering, and there's only 0, 1 outcomes. either you fail or succeed. There is nothing like good enough, because it was never good enough. That's one of the lessons my parents taught me, that I was never good enough. And those are the things that stuck with me, the bad things that they said. So that also is a symptom of trauma, the internalizing all the negative. I'm sure my parents did what they thought best for me. I'm sure my parents did what they thought best in general. Doesn't mean they were right. I have stopped contacting my parents. I don't talk to them. Talk to them extremely rarely. I've had a couple of years when we didn't talk whatsoever. They didn't know I had cancer for the second time because I never told them. So that was the level of me not choosing not to be in their life. And they have managed perfectly without me. They may say that they love me, they may say that they miss me, but they have never showed it. And their words, I'm sure they are true in their perspective, but honestly, that's not enough. This time for me. And since it's not enough for me, and being in contact with them causes me pain, I have chosen not to be part of their life. I don't feel I have an obligation to talk to them, to be in touch with them, to meet with them. I don't feel any kind of obligation whatsoever. The fact that we are genetically related doesn't mean shit to me. I have a right to choose who is my real family and who is not. And I have chosen them not to be my family because they only cause me pain. When I confronted them to tell them my perspective of childhood, of what I am going through, what I was going through, they were incapable of acknowledging that. Of course, there was denial, and that there maybe once was physical punishment because I didn't study hard enough. That's the thing. Physical punishment is never justified. No one should go through physical punishment for something as stupid as not studying hard enough. But I was always compared to my sister. As I've said, over the years, they have learned to manage perfectly without me. And I will not disrupt their ecosystem that they have created for themselves. Sure, on some level, I think I need a kind of belonging, family, or something like that. Maybe a sense of belonging, to be part of something bigger, to be part of some unit. But it doesn't have to be my family that I was born into. There can be a family that I choose to be part of, or the one that I create around me, my friends. I was always being compared to my sister, as I've said, and the comparisons really messed me up. And that again left me with a type of thinking that I was never good enough, not for them anyway. And since they were the most important people in my life, that became kind of a leitmotif for me throughout my life. If I were never good enough for anyone, because obviously if I weren't good enough for the people that love me, then why should I be good enough for anyone else? Then why should I even fucking try? And that's one of the reasons and one of the moments when I started to self-medicate with alcohol. But I survived. If you can't handle your emotions, if you don't know what you feel and how you feel, sit down, ask yourself, how do I feel right now? Maybe listening to this, maybe in 5 minutes, maybe stop listening, stop watching, leave it, let it go, sit down and ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? And if you don't know, that may be a sign that you can't cope with your emotions on your own, and you may need help to recognize your emotions. If you've been physically punished in the past by anyone, your teacher, your parents, your siblings, anyone, my guess is you need to talk to someone about it or read about it, what it did to your brain, educate yourself, think about it, and think about how that makes you feel. And I promise you, on the other side, there's a life that is far more beautiful than you would ever imagine. Knowing who you truly are, knowing yourself, knowing what you feel. This is the goal. This is what it means to be human. This is what it means to be in contact with yourself. And in time, you will develop a kind of compassion for yourself, which is really important. You may feel compassion towards others, but if you don't have that same compassion towards yourself as you would have for anyone else, if they were in your shoes, I would say that that is a sign that you need to talk to someone, or in the very least, educate yourself. Think about if you've been abused in any way, physically, emotionally. I'm not even going to go into essaying or anything like that, because that is a whole level of extreme. Talk to someone. Talk to yourself. Open up to yourself about it. If you're walking and suddenly burst into tears without any apparent reason, that's the built-up emotional trauma. That's the built-up trauma. That's the built-up emotions inside you that you don't know how to feel and you don't know how to express in a healthy way. Talk to your friends. Don't let those emotions build up inside you to a point when they explode out of nothing. Look, I have a history of when I don't know, something as stupid as dropping a mug, or I don't know, I was doing the dishes and I dropped something, and I would completely go into a rage, go into a fit. I was suddenly so very angry. I wanted to throw around stuff, and on few occasions I actually did. That's the build-up emotions that explode without any adequate reason. Or if you're sitting watching TV and you suddenly burst into tears, into an uncontrollable sob. Again, those are the emotions that are repressed deep down inside you. And I'm saying you, because I've experienced this myself. The pain of digging up my own emotions, because it is a painful process. Because at some point, you will need to confront your emotions. You will need to confront yourself. You will need to confront your history. You will need to sit down, remember what happened, and relive those things that happened to you. And that's painful, I know. But it's also something that's worth being done. Because once you do that, and you reach the other side of the rainbow, the quality of your life is going to be so much better. You may find yourself that you don't need that drink after a hard day's work. You'll just say, okay, that was my job's done, and I don't need to think about it anymore. because my work day is done, and that's it. Or if it leaves you angry, sad, or euphoric, you won't grab that drink. You won't grab that celebratory smoke or anything. You won't have to, because you'll be able to express your emotions in a healthy way. Share them with someone close to you or a friend. Talk about it, and it will not be this huge explosion of euphoria or of sadness or of rage. You will be complete, you will be whole. Maybe for the first time in your life, you will be whole. Wouldn't you want? You know, there's this thing, traumas. Yeah, they mess you up real good, but it's never your fault. The fact that someone caused you pain when you were a kid is not your fault. The fact that you've been traumatized by someone is not your fault. But it is your responsibility to do something about it. Because you owe it to yourself to live a happy life. And talking a little bit more about traumas, what do you think the Palestinian people feel right now? What do you think all those children feel? It's the 29th of October when I'm recording this. The siege on Gaza started on the 7th. Yes, Hamas did a heinous thing. And it is just to be outraged. Because killing is bad. But it is never justifiable to commit genocide and use the death of your own people as justification to wipe out an entire indigenous people. Never. The people whose parents remember the Holocaust, parents or grandparents remember the Holocaust, are now doing the same thing to Palestinians. Don't you think that's fucked up? Over 5,000 civilians died. 2,000 of them are children. 1,000 women. That is never justifiable. There is no argument in the world that would justify this crime. Freedom for Palestine. Freedom for the Palestinian people. First and foremost, educate yourself. Second, look for content creators who are gathering information, gathering representatives for the EU, for the US. They have even letter templates you can use, sign, and send to your representatives calling for the stop of genocide. Freedom for Palestine. Freedom for the Palestinian people.